Hi, my name is Akankshya Upadhyay and I am your English instructor. In today's lesson, we will be looking at how to suggest, advise and persuade others. And this lesson is in the second unit of our English book. So let's begin. First, we will be looking at some suggestions. So what do the word suggest mean? It means offering an idea. In other words, we can also say suggest means to propose a thought or also an idea. So if we make suggestion, it means we mention a possible course of action to someone. So we'll now begin with the sentence structures for suggestion. The sentence structure. First, it's how about or what about plus ing. So here's an example. How about starting a food camp? Let's go through another example. What about going out for a walk this evening? Now another sentence structure is how about plus simple present. Example, how about I bring you the notes of the class you missed last week. Now we use another structure, how about plus noun. We use the noun phrase after how about when we make suggestions about food or drink. So here's an example. How about some lunch? Or how about coffee? Now to make a general suggestion, we use why not. So another structure using why not. So here's an example for you. Why not take some water from the well? Or another example, why not go out for a movie? So these are the general suggestions. Now another structure is using why not. Another structure is using why don't, which is used to make specific suggestions. For example, you look tired. Why don't you take rest? And another example is it's already dark. Why don't you stay here tonight? So we'll try another sentence structure, which is let's. It's just as we say let us. So here's some examples. We use let's to make suggestions about doing something with someone. For example, let's call Sita and ask her to solve the mathematical problems. Another example, let's go out for a movie tonight. Now to make negative suggestion, we can use let's not. Let's not. For example, let's not stay here anymore. Or another example, let's not argue about this. There are other methods where we can make negative suggestions, which we will see later on, but we move forward for now by using should. We can use should to make general suggestions like you should go to a doctor. Or we can use shouldn't to make negative suggestion like you shouldn't go to bed so late. So shouldn't is actually should not. This is the shorthand writing for should not, shouldn't. Now moving further, we have could. Here's an example. You could borrow a pen from your friend. Or you can say, you could wear your sweater. There's another structure using there's, always. So this is again a shorthand writing for there is. So there is called theirs. It's written this way. It's pronounced as theirs. So it's there's always a next year. This structure is used to make weak suggestions. Now we move forward with the 11th structure, that's using if I were you. So here's an example. If I were you, I would scold him. So another structure is using you'd better. So here's an example. You'd better not call him. Except these 12 structures, we can always suggest with the word suggest itself, or shall can also be used. Now while using the word suggest, the common mistake that we make is we write or we say, I suggest you to drink water. I suggest you to drink water is wrong. It's an incorrect statement because we never use to after we use suggest. So the correct form is I suggest you drinking water. Or you can also say I suggest that you drink water. So remember that when we are using the word suggest, we never use to do something. This could be anything, drink water, to dance, anything. We don't use this structure. Instead, we use the structure with ing, or like suggest, you verb plus ing, or suggest that you plus verb. These are the ways that we can suggest. Now let's quickly go through what we've learned. Suggest means offering an idea or proposing an idea. The sentence structures are, the first structure we looked at was by using how about or what about plus ing. So how about starting a food camp? It's a verb plus ing here. And how about going out for a walk this evening? So another example, another structure was by using how about plus simple present tense. How about I bring you the notes of the class you missed last week? So how about plus simple present This is the simple present form, which is bring. Now we have another structure, how about plus noun. So this is used when we make suggestions about food or drink. Make suggestion about food or drink. So some lunch. Lunch is a food and coffee is a drink. So how about some lunch and how about coffee is we're talking about food and drink. So we are making suggestion with this structure. Another structure, why not? Why not is used to make general suggestions. And this structure is usually found during advertisements. Why not take some water from the well? Or why not go out for a movie tonight? We have another structure using why don't, which is used to make specific suggestion. We made general suggestion by using why not, and we're making the specific suggestion using why don't. So you look tired, why don't you take rest? This is a specific suggestion because you look tired. You specifically look tired, that's why you need to take rest. Because you look tired, I am suggesting you to take rest. That's why it becomes a specific suggestion. It's already dark, why don't you stay here tonight? So you are at my home and it's getting really dark. Because it's getting dark, I'm asking you, I'm suggesting you to stay at my home tonight. Because you don't want to walk, you don't want to go in the dark alone, right? So it's already dark, so I'm suggesting you to stay here. That's why this becomes a specific suggestion. Further, we look at the use of let's. Let's is used to make suggestion about doing something with someone. So two people are involved while we make suggestion using let's. So let's call Sita and ask her to solve the mathematical problem. So because I need the mathematical problem to be solved, I need Sita. It's making suggestion doing something with someone. So doing like solving the mathematical problems with Sita. Let's go out for a movie. I want to have fun, so I want to go out for a movie. Another structure we looked at was with let's not. Let's not is used to make negative suggestions. So let's not stay here anymore. Let's not argue about this. Another structure using should and shouldn't. Shouldn't is used with negative suggestions and should is used for positive ones. So example, you should go to a doctor. You shouldn't go to bed so late. Because you shouldn't go to bed late, it becomes a negative suggestion. And you should go to a doctor is suggesting you to go to a doctor because maybe you have headache or anything. Another structure using could. You could borrow a pen from your friend. So could is used generally like we use should. You could wear your sweater. So here's another structure. There's always. So this is used to make weak suggestions. As you can see, there's always a next year. So because something did not happen this year, you're suggesting the person to try it again the next year. So there's always a next year. Another structure using if I were you. If I were you, I would scold him. So this is a suggestion that you should have scolded him, but you're just letting the person know that if I were you, you would scold him. Another structure is you'd better. You'd better not call him. And as I said, you can also use suggest and shall for suggestions instead of these structures. So this is a warning that you do not use suggest with an infinitive. So I suggest you to drink water is not correct. It's an incorrect statement. You use I suggest you drinking water. So it's a verb plus ing. I suggest that you drink water. It's that in front of the verb. I suggest that you drink water. So remember never to use the word suggest with an infinitive. Now we'll look at an example from the book. Let's go through an example. I have extracted a small piece from the letter written to Lakpa by his sister Nima. She has suggested some of the things to her brother to improve his English. So we'll look at the sentence structure that she has used. You should always try to communicate in English with your teacher and friends. So the first sentence here in the example itself is the structure that we saw previously using should. So you should always try to communicate. This is suggesting. Then further she says, why don't you buy a radio for yourself and listen to the programs in English? So this is another structure that we have already gone through. How about talking to the foreign tourists who come to visit our area? So this is another structure. How about doing something that we've already learned about? Again, she says, if I were you, which we had listed in the 12th point, if I were you, I would talk to teacher about different audiovisual materials on learning English. So here's another structure that we have not been through. It's, wouldn't it be better if you got some of them for your practice? So we know how to use could and should. So it's similar with would as well. And wouldn't is used for a question structure. So wouldn't it be better if you got some of them for your practice? Now we will go through another part of our lesson, that's advising. So let's begin with the new part of Unit 2, which is advising. Advice is mainly used to warn people about possible danger. So let's note this down. Mainly used to warn people about possible danger. Advice is a stronger word than suggest. So here's a formal definition of advice. So the word advice is a verb used to mean to give advice. Now, what is an advice and what is the difference between advice and advice? The first difference, as you can see, is the spelling. So it's A-D-V-I-S-E and A-D-V-I-C-E. These are two different things. Advice is a verb, whereas advice is a noun. So advice means suggestion about what someone should do. Always remember that advice is an uncountable noun. So I'll give you an example. She gave me a lot of advice. This is an incorrect statement. Do you know why? It's because of the phrase that we've used, a lot. We cannot use this phrase in uncountable nouns. So what is the correct form? You can write, she gave me some advice. Since you cannot count advice, it's uncountable. Now, suppose you want to make it a countable noun. You want a countable advice, then we can use a phrase, namely a piece of. So maybe you can say, I have 2 pieces of advice for you, or advice for you about the finals. So if you want to make advice a countable noun, you can use the phrase a piece of and make it countable. Like, I have 2 pieces of advice. 2 is always countable. You can count it. 1, 2. 2 pieces of advice for you about the finals. So I hope you understand the difference between advice and advice. Now we have advice. We have some facts about advice, which is advice is a very formal way and is always used with subjects like doctor, teacher, counselor, or the experts in the fields. So let me put it down for you. Advice is very formal. It is used with subjects including the doctor or a teacher or a counselor. Now, how do we advise things? How to make the structure using advice? I shall make a table for you so that it be a little easier for us to understand. So here is a table, and these are the verbs that you can use to advise. Now we will go through them one by one. So let's try making sentence from this table. You should make changes. You'd better make changes. Or they ought to make changes. I shouldn't make changes. So first we will be looking at should and ought to. So should and ought to. We use these phrases for general advice. Okay, so here's an example. He ought to look for a new school. So this is a general advice that he ought to look for a new school. Or we can say he should look for a new school. Now we have another, we'll go through another structure that's with had better. We use had better only to give strong advice. So had better is always strong, the strong advice. This is also used to give warnings, to warn people. For example, you had better finish this project. So this is a strong advice that you better finish your project. Now we have other terms like maybe or perhaps, even I think, to make soft advice. For example, I think you should go back to school. Let me add one more word here, that's probably, which is also used for soft advice. And the example, she probably should go back to school. She probably should go back to school. Now we have some other specific structures. We'll go through some of them. The first structure we will look at is advice plus noun. So an example could be, my doctor advised exercise after my heart attack. Now we have another structure, which is advice plus pronoun. For example, the teacher advised us to study well. Now I'll give you some examples of general advice. You can write, I advise you to lose weight. Or you can say, they finally did what I advised. Now we know what is an advice, we know what is a suggestion, and it's really very common. It's very similar in nature. So, to be a little bit more clear, we will be looking at the differences between advise and suggest. So anyone can suggest, but only experts can advise. You need to have some knowledge to advise something to someone. So advising or advice needs an expert. So an expert can advise, whereas anyone can suggest. Anyone can suggest, but only experts can advise. If I give you a suggestion, it's something you might like to think about. So if I suggest you something, you might like to think about it, or you may not. However, if I give an advice, then that's something I think you should think about. And of course, the another major difference is suggest and advice. Advice is formal, whereas suggest is not very formal. So advice is more formal than suggest. Now we move forward with the third section of the unit, which is persuading. Persuading. So what do persuade mean? Persuade means to induce someone to do something through reasoning or argument. So, to induce someone to do something through reasoning or argument. Another definition, in other words, is to make someone do or believe something by giving them a good reason to do it, or by talking to that person and making them believe it. So it means the same. Still, let us write it down. To make someone do something by giving them a good reason to do it, by talking to that person and making them believe it. You need to have a great confidence when you persuade others. You need to have very good knowledge about something to persuade the other person. So the main thing that you need to have, the main skill that you need to have to persuade is your confidence and knowledge, of course. So here are some examples. If you use XYZ steel, your house will be the strongest and most reliable. Try XYZ steel. So what does this mean? This sentence shows an immense confidence and a very good knowledge about the XYZ steel that a person has. So the person is pretty sure when he tells you that if you use XYZ steel, your house will be the strongest and most reliable. So he's persuading you to use the XYZ steel so that your house will be the next strongest and the most reliable. So if we use XYZ steel according to the person, there is no chance that your house is going to be weak. your house will be the strongest, and that's why he wants you to try XYZ steel. So this is persuading. The person is persuading you to try XYZ steel, and he is very confident about the quality of the steel and the property, of course, that is going to make your house the strongest and most reliable. Now another example. Our store has the lowest prices and best selection of all the stores in town. So the person has a very good knowledge about the store, about his store, and he's pretty confident that his store offers the lowest prices and the best selections. So he has the confidence and he has ensured you about the best deal that you can get in his store with the lowest price and the best selection. So what else do you need in a store when it has a very low price to offer with the best quality, the best selection? So he also adds of all the stores in town, which means that in the whole town, his store can be considered the best because it's offering you things in lower prices with best selections. So he's actually persuading you he's telling you to just like come into my store and look at what I am doing. So he's persuading you, convincing you, trying to convince you to believe that his store has the lowest prices and best selection of all the stores in the town. One more example. Nepal has the most soothing scenarios and traveling destinations that anyone can ever dream about. So Nepal has the most soothing scenarios and traveling destinations that anyone can ever dream about. So I'll add an optional statement here. Come visit Nepal. So the person is trying to persuade the other person that Nepal has the most beautiful, most soothing and peaceful scenarios and traveling destinations. So you must visit Nepal because there are so many things in Nepal to do. And you are going to get the best experience because you're saying that anyone can ever dream about. Nepal has that soothing scenarios and traveling destinations. So you must visit Nepal. The person is trying to convince you to visit Nepal because Nepal has so many things that you have always dreamt about. So this is persuading. This is all for today's class. Now I will leave you with a homework. So the first question is to suggest your father or suggest your friend to quit smoking. Suppose your friend is a chain smoker, so please suggest your friend to quit smoking. Another question is to advise your uncle or your aunt, to send her daughter to school. Your aunt is not sending her daughter to school because she is a girl. So I want you to advise your aunt to send her daughter to school. And the last question will be to persuade your friend to go to a doctor instead of Dhami Jhakri. I hope you complete your task, and in between, if you have any problems, you can always write to me at learning@deerwalk.com. www.edu.np. Also, don't forget to mention some comments or suggestions. Thanks for watching.